So I'm watching the end of stage 2 of this Indianapolis Road Course, and it's quite a doozy. Almost all the big name drivers have punted all the stage points. The RC cars of Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon are getting all of it. So did Ryan Preece and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They rounded out the top 5 as well in both stages. Even both Spire Motorsports cars had a slice of the stage point pies from this race. And heading into stage 3, most of my lineups are going to be relying on solely the finishing position. And that seemed to be the case. William Byron, Joey Logano, and Martin Truex Jr. have solidified their spot in the top 10 with about 10 laps to go. And right around that time, there was a late race caution. But never mind a restart in this stage of the race. As long as all my drivers stay in position, we should be okay.
Contact between the two leaders is allowed. Oh, the 24 is spinning. The 24's there's multiple cars into the wall here. There must be oil or some kind of fluid down on the racetrack right there. We got more cars coming in.
William Byron is reporting that the curb came up. He hit the curb in the 24.
Yeah, the curbing is coming up, and that's what everyone hit when they were coming through there in turn 6.
Or that can happen. Yeah, a good chunk of each of my lineup are going to get taken out in this crash. The one where the turn 6 curb comes up and causes a huge mess, led by the likes of William Byron, Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, and several others. And so, let's look at the damage report. Martin Truex Jr. spun out the lap before this incident, and by the end of it, hung on for a 15th place finish. Taking out Ross Chastain in favor of Chase Briscoe minutes before the start of the race, it benefited only slightly, just a net gain in 5 points. But having Joey Logano in here, that really put a big dent in my lineup, and for most of my other ones as well. The changes I made to WastElliott before the race weren't as lucky. I took out both Busch brothers, and in their place was Joey Logano and William Byron, 2 cars that got involved in the curb explosion crash. And that was just enough for this roster to dip below double-digit points for this fantasy week. Pick Stenhouse has better changes before the start of this race. Some pre-race changes I made to Pick Stenhouse really didn't affect too much. I took out Joey Logano in favor of William Byron, both having the same amount of points after crashing. But taking out Chase Briscoe for Kyle Busch got me a few more points. As surprisingly, 128 points is going to be the best I'm going to be doing for the week of Indianapolis. And that really goes to show you the extent of that curb explosion crash. It took out all those good cars. Not to mention the stage point distribution. It really meant that stage points were low scoring, unless if you had the likes of Tyler Reddick, Austin Dillon, or Ricky Stenhouse Jr. somehow. The saving grace for Pick Stenhouse has to be AJ Allmendinger. Good on me to have him for at least one of my lineups. Big bummer that I didn't have him for all of them. In NoChevy, Andrew recommended me that I took out Michael McDowell in favor of Cole Custer, all because of Custer's results have been slightly better than McDowell's in the last few weeks. When hardly any of your drivers get any stage points, it's going to be tough to make the garage pick. Such is the case here. We garaged Austin Cindric and kept Christopher Bell in, leaving the only saving grace for NoChevy was Matt DiBenedetto, top 5 with a few stage points. And just like AJ Allmendinger, some more plays with DiBenedetto here would have been far greater to have. Unfortunately, most of my lineups were too busy spending their final plays here for some of the big name drivers like Truex and Logano, and so that really kept me from having a lot of sleeper picks for this week. And so to round out the carnage-filled fantasy lineups, Jackuwarz World Network fortunately gets at least 100 points, and as the only lineup that didn't make any changes pre-race, it found 2 of its starters get caught up in the curb explosion crash. World Network gets the Chevrolet pick right with AJ winning, after loading up all my bonus picks with Chase Elliott winning throughout. And despite this being a low-scoring week, my overall standings didn't take quite a big hit, and all of them being high ownership percentage. So now we're going to look at the top results from Indianapolis Road Course. I hope you're ready for this one, because this top 5 right here, it makes even the Bristol Dirt Race look predictable. The most points you're going to earn from one driver is AJ. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is the only driver left standing after earning all those stage points. But I can imagine the most that Tyler Reddick was the saving grace for most of the players' lineups. As sweeping both stages, that always helps with your total result after a race. So that's my results from the Indianapolis Road Course. That was quite the twist result indeed. I didn't even mention Chase Briscoe at the very end. Got penalized for going off into the grass, and then spinning out Denny Hamlin, and by the end of all that getting parked. Which for Jackuwarz 1 and WastElliott, that really hurt quite a bit. That is if Christopher Bell and Joey Logano crashing wasn't enough. But now, that race is finally over. We're moving on to something a lot more tame, at least it should be, in Michigan. And looking at the playoff cut line, most of it should be the same as I said in the last 2 weeks. Kevin Harvick and Tyler Reddick should be in good shape as long as there's no race winner outside that top 16. Austin Dillon's going to need a big point day from Michigan, a lot better than his teammate, if he wants any chance at getting close to that cut line. And segueing into our tier list, I really hope that you guys aren't planning on saving for this week, as you should be in the mode of, if you have them, play them. And in that top play row, from the likes of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin, because the following race at Daytona, nothing's guaranteed with any of these drivers on the tier list. But getting back into Hamlin's results at 550 results, and we'll later look at his results from last year's races. Compared to the first 2 months of the season, Hamlin's point totals have cooled off. He went from 50s to about 40s to high 30s, but that shouldn't be nearly enough to keep you from playing Denny this week at Michigan. He should be more than capable of giving you a good points result, and after losing the regular season point lead to Kyle Larson, I can surmise that Denny will have something to say about that. And from 9th, go after a few more stage points to keep pace with the 5 car. But depending on usages, if you don't have a Denny Hamlin play here, I do recommend some of his teammates for Michigan as well, such as Kyle Busch or Martin Truex Jr. But even if some of those drivers aren't available to you at this stage, some of these blind spot play drivers in this category have some good shots at a good result for you. Tyler Reddick should be at the front line of this page of drivers. And going back to the top playlist, so is Kevin Harvick and Ryan Blaney. Brad Keselowski, for all his faults throughout 2021, even he's a solid option this week if you're really that spent on usages. And it's hard not to believe that you're still sitting on at least 4 or 5 Keselowski plays at this stage of the regular season. But in this category, Alex Bowman might be the most interesting pick for this week. The last 3 races in 550 results, he's gotten top 10s, 2 of those being top 5s with a win at Pocono. And with Bowman right outside the top 10 in the regular season point standings, I do like the idea of him getting some extra points to try and get himself in that top 10. That way he can go into Darlington with a few more playoff points. But then again, if you look at just his Michigan results, they've been hardly anything to be impressed by. He failed to finish inside the top 20 in both Michigan races last year. However, in 2019, he did show some promises in the Michigan races there. He earned the stage points in those year's races, maybe not as many top 10s, that would make him more of a promising play for Michigan. He'll be starting 10th this week, so I wouldn't write him off quite yet. If you're out of Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson plays, I would absolutely have Bowman first if you're looking to have at least one Hendrick play this week. Long shot plays, you know the drill. These are drivers that have had a few good results this year at 550 tracks. But there's a reason these drivers have very low ownership percentages. For all year, they've been high risk, low reward. And at the tail end of it, Ryan Newman has been one of those drivers. His 2021 results haven't been very great, and that's without saying his top 10 result last week at Indianapolis. Before it, all he has is his good result at the Bristol Dirt Race. Everywhere else, the 6 cars struggled to stay inside even the top 20. But if you were to look for some sort of silver lining with Newman, is that looking at just his Michigan results, there's some promise to be had. He's not going to earn stage points, he hardly does at any other track. And the only scenario where you would play Newman would be in a lineup like NoChevy, and even there at best I would stash him in the garage, with a high likelihood that he would just stay in the garage. Caution plays, these are a lot of drivers that have had very up and down results in the last few weeks, and or have simply been outclassed by their teammates. This applies to Austin Dillon, Christopher Bell, and William Byron. Now I really wanted to get William Byron's final play here, but now I'm really thinking about getting those final plays done next week at Daytona. It's been that kind of stretch for Byron, because since leaving Pocono, Byron's results have been dropping off. He looked awfully slow at New Hampshire, as well as Atlanta. And looking at just his Michigan results, they leave a little bit to be desired. No top 10s last year, with some suboptimal points. If you're at multiple Byron plays left at this stage, then I guess I can't stop you too much on trying to get him in, but I feel it might be a lost cause if you do try to go that route, as it is for me with my Ryan Blaney plays. This week I don't really have too many avoid drivers. You can easily bet against Joey Logano here because it's a 550 horsepower race. Then again, it's Michigan, it's one of Joey's better tracks. But that 42 car of Ross Chastain, nearly all year long, has been struggling on these 550 results, just like Logano. In all of them, he's never finished inside the top 10, and at most has only scored 23 points. For this week at Michigan, you may not need to dig this deep just to get a good pick. You're better off just sticking with the picks of, say, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, even Tyler Reddick. And that being said, for my lineups, it's going to make picking pretty simple. Simply get the best drivers left. Jackuwarz has ran out of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and Kyle Busch plays, leaving the likes of Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Martin Truex Jr. to fill out half of that roster spot. Kevin Harvick is going to be an easy shoe-in as well, so will Tyler Reddick. And rather than see what he gets us at Daytona, let's get that final Alex Bowman play spent here instead. Not having a Kyle Larson play for this race isn't going to be nice. That's why he's stacked in the bonus picks. And then Kevin Harvick is top Ford, Kyle Busch is top Toyota. WastElliott, similar situation. We're out of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano plays. And instead of Denny Hamlin, we have the final Kyle Busch play to expend here. But we'll also take the gamble of Kyle Busch winning at Michigan. Even though Larson's the head-on favorite to win this week at Michigan, let's go with the curveball pick for WastElliott, as it always does, and say Toyota wins for Michigan. Thanks to the abundance of Ricky Stenhouse Jr. plays, only Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson plays have been ran out for this lineup, and so we got quite a lot of wiggle room to play around with. For one, the starters are absolutely loaded with Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Kyle Busch, and that may or may not make stashing Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the garage a play that ends up having the 47 car stay in the garage. That's how much faith I have in the starters. The bonus picks here will be copy and pasted from Jackuwarz 1, as we don't need to play around with too much with that area. NoChevy has one Joe Gibbs play left, that being with Christopher Bell. It's out of Ryan Blaney plays as well, leaving this lineup in a play the best available situation, and that's the case with this lineup. And despite my sayings in avoid Joey Logano potentially, I think when I line him up with the other options I have for this week, he's still the best in that group. If there's any chance that Brad Keselowski has at a good result before the end of the regular season, it has to come here at Michigan, possibly Daytona next week. And if somehow Ryan Blaney or Kevin Harvick don't get top forward, then I do like Brad's chances at getting that, being next in line. Jackuwarz World Network is in the same situation as WastElliott. It's out of Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano plays, and so no real reason to not copy the lineups from that roster. Only real difference is the garage. Instead of Kurt Busch, we'll have Tyler Reddick here. As with the bonus picks, we'll copy the same ones from Pick Stenhouse and Jackuwarz 1. That's my picks for the week of Michigan. Apologize, this is going up on the same day as the race, which coverage of the Firekeepers Casino 400 will begin noon Pacific Standard Time. I have no expectations for this race to match the chaos that was last week at Indianapolis Road Course, but from a fantasy perspective, you really shouldn't. This should be a week for you to make up points and get in your final stud plays. Enjoy the race at Michigan later today. Next week is the regular season finale race at Daytona under the lights. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you next time.